Hey, Warrior Saints. Glad to have you beautiful people with us as we continue our conversation from yesterday.
The follow-up then, why are we in this world with this identity politics then? And I think I'm going to throw it out that we're in this societal thing where politics become our new identity and become something that we fight over and that we become so bound by because we no longer live in a society that has a culture. And that becomes our new culture. So we don't have something that is helping us to identify. So let me play it all out. I've been watching The Last Kingdom on Netflix at your recommendation.
Uhtred.
It's phenomenal.
It's great.
He doesn't know who he is anymore. And the whole interplay, I'm only in season 4, so
Yeah, that's good.
but he's at that point in season 4 where he's very much confused who he is. He's no longer a Dane. And someone even says to him, "You're no longer Uhtred Ragnarsson."
Right.
He just tried to retake his homeland of Bebbanburg, and he no longer has it. And he says, "I'm not Uhtred of Bebbanburg. I'm not Uhtred Ragnarsson. I'm no longer the protector of the king. Who am I? And he says the words, "I am nothing." He is completely devoid. But up until that point in his life, there are cultures that exist, that he lives by certain cultures, and he has a framework that comes with that. We currently are living in a society that is without that culture, that is without a framework and a way to live. So we can't even say that the Orthodox Church is countercultural anymore because there's no culture for it to be there with. So we go after these other things that become new references, that become new identities that give us a definition of who we are. When at the end of the day, as warrior saints, as Orthodox Christians, we have an identity sitting right there in the book in front of you.
Yeah. We've got a culture. I don't agree with you with all of that. I mean, I know what you're saying, but I mean, it's a multicultural culture of which, and I'm not talking American melting pot. I'm saying that anyone can decide and be the reference for their culture. I'm a this, I'm a that, right? That's the whole problem of this, identity politics is that you get to pick whatever you want and then you define it and it becomes cultural in that sense. What we see, so the question is, how's that working for you, right? Like it's become a chaos
Right.
and a mess and everyone's in total chaos out there. If I can steer it to in a different direction, not in a different direction, further, according to what this idea that you're fleshing out, is that our point to make is, look, we know there's all that other stuff out there. It's all vying for your attention and wanting you to bow down and worship. We're saying it doesn't work. We are saying that God's way is the only way that actually works, that the way of the cross, living a crucifixion life, is the only way that works. It's the framework that will take you from where you are to where you want to be, right? And I
Right.
don't mean that, again, just in the sense of I live this life and I want to live forever in heaven. Okay, I hope it gets there too. I don't know if I'm going, but I'm talking about even in this life,
Mm-hmm.
that if we live crucifixionally, we can find ourselves where we are going to where we want to be. But I don't get to decide how that happens, i.e. the framework. Because if I were to, it would simply be just about me and getting what I want, doing what I want.
Right.
But that doesn't work. Christ
Exactly.
is telling us that to slay the monsters, it goes through the cross, baby. It's death. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this cherry picking and choosing and rationalization that goes along with it really is just about getting what we want, when we want, how we want it. Because we're picking and choosing the things that we decide are our culture. And in picking and choosing these things, we are now being self-referential.
Yeah.
And in our picking and choosing and making all of these hodgepodge things, there is again no culture, right? Like we've just got 70,000 cultures. Like there's a new culture for every religion that exists, right? Or every denomination. There's well over 220 denominations of Christianity in the U.S. alone.
No, not 220, like thousands.
Fine.
Right.
Even better.
Of which the new religion of politics is one that, and I know you've talked about this before in some of your own teachings and thoughts, that politics is its own religion. It's a religion that people, subscribe to.
It is. And the Battle of Gettysburg was fought between the North and the South, because the North and the South, and I mean, it's more complicated than this, fine, but the North and the South inherently had two different cultures that went to war with each other. We are no longer in the culture wars. We are in the cola wars, which we're not even in those anymore over Coke or Pepsi, right? Like Coke has dominated everything except Western Pennsylvania, where we still like Pepsi more than everything else. And how do we get through it all, right? Because we're ships lost at sea in many ways through this. And I for Warrior Saints, then Scripture becomes the answer.
Yeah, it's the reference. You have to look at it. You have to, so I guess to answer directly, why would you choose God? Well, the statement is ultimately that, obviously, I would say that his way works. But the proof, if you will, in the pudding is that when Christ was crucified, he was raised by the glory of the Father on the third day, and in so doing, he conquers death, sin and death, right? The biggest monsters of all time. Luke Skywalker conquered the Empire and dealt with Darth Vader. Okay, great. That was awesome. We appreciated that because it was very grim.
Yeah.
But even bigger than that monster is sin and its outcome, death. And so Christ conquers that with the weapon of the cross. That's the lure, right? And it because life eternal is promised to those who follow him. Like,
right.
That's the promise. All right. So if that's the case, then you have to deal with him, God, and his Christ. And excuse me, and you have to deal with his commandments and his words. And his words are, hey, you need to take up your own cross and follow me.
Right.
You need to put your own will aside in order to do my will. But if you do that, it works, right? And the proof is that I've raised my son from the glory from the dead on the third day by the glory of the Father, as Paul says in Romans, right? So I know it sounds crass for me, but there's proof in the pudding.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want it, you got to follow. You got to do the same thing, which is why we always say we must live a crucifixional life, which I think comes down to the sacrifice of self for the sake of other, like the sacrifice of my will in order to do God's will. It becomes in a world, and even though you said, and rightly so, that we are no longer in a culture, we are in a culture of cultures, 70,000 cultures, right? All of them, or at least let's say the lion's share of it is self-focused.
Yeah.
But we need to learn to be, and I struggle with it too, I'm equally as guilty, but we need to struggle to be selfless, which is Christ on the cross, which is crucifixional, which means to sacrifice ourselves for other to do God's will.
Yeah. And it's hard as heck.
Yes, it is.
Yesterday, I took a friend to the airport. I picked up my daughter from school. And then I went, and instead of just picking up my daughter from school, I went and picked up my son from his school. And now I'm driving back from the airport at 5:00 in the afternoon with two kids in the car who are getting hungry and fighting over whatever they decided to fight over in that moment in the back seat of the car. But my wife came home to an empty house that was quiet and said to me, I haven't come home to an empty house that's quiet in I don't know how long, right? So the point of why I was doing it, as difficult as it was, as miserable as it might have been, the point of why I was doing it was so that she had that few moments of peace. I got my own 5 minutes of peace earlier, like last week, when I took a Waymo for the first time, and it was actually completely silent.
Yeah.
And it was completely silent in a car. Now, for those of you that don't know what Waymo is, it is an autonomous driver which means that no one is driving the car, which means that no one is making small talk with you while you're sitting in the back seat, unlike an Uber where you have to talk to your Uber driver because they're going to rate you on your friendliness and how your conversation was. You now are just free to sit in silence, to sit with music or whatever, and you have that moment of peace. My crucifixional living, to use this trite example, was trying to find that for my wife and give her those same moments.
Yeah. Awesome. Glad you did that. I mean,
But it was
and
hard.
I bet. No, and your kids I love, obviously I'm biased, but they're small children. I mean, 4 and 2, you know, like that's a
Mhm.
lot. And your bride deserved that moment. I mean, I think that's the whole thing is that we, you know, like everything we see around us is pushing us into focusing on ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like you always say, you do you, boo boo. And then we always comment where we live here, there is a local casino on reservation land. And their slogan that they do, their advertising is you do you, right? We make fun of Burger King, have it your way, you rule. And we make fun of L'Oreal, because you're worth it. And you know what I mean? We make fun of Apple, the iPhone, right? I mean, everything
Yeah.
it's all
Self.
yeah, everything's pushing that direction. I mean, it's just thrown at us. So it's hard. I mean, it's hard to deal with that. But when we start to become sacrificial, it's interesting. How about this? This is totally off track, but I noticed that in my own experience, and definitely when our people in our community here go out and serve others,
Mm-hmm.
they feel awesome.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when we go it sounds silly, but going to a soup kitchen and serving someone food, giving something away that's yours to someone else for their benefit always feels great. You know, like, and I know, again, silly trite examples, but those things are kind of proof in the pudding that Christ's way works.
Well, not only proof in the pudding that Christ's way works, but proof in the pudding that that's what we're supposed to be doing. If
You're
we're-
built for it.
We're built for it. When we're doing the stuff that we know we're not supposed to be doing, we feel miserable. We know that it's not right. We know that something is off. And we feel almost like we're in a hot furnace of despair crushing us under whatever, because we know that we're not living life the way that we're supposed to be living. We know that we're creating a different reference,
Yeah, we're off track.
and
Yeah,
we
for
know
sure.
we're off track.
Yeah, I mean, you can feel it. It's self-evident. All right, great stuff. I loved it. That was a good thread. Maybe.
Hey, Warrior Saints. Thank you so much for being with us. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps us get the word out there. And if you want more, visit us at warriorsaints.org and subscribe to Understanding the Bible. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.